This is Jonathan Regev coming from here, from Tel Aviv. Israel is waking up to the second morning of the Jewish New Year, and the country is slowly waking up due to the holiday. The same applies for this, the central Rothschild Boulevard in Tel Aviv, where we are located. This place will be full of people in the afternoon, as it's a central hub in Tel Aviv. And as the new year is beginning, the Israelis coming here to have coffee, to spend a nice day outside at the end of summer, will ask themselves many questions regarding where this country is going in this new year and in this year-long conflict that Israel is engaged in. On the one hand, if we look at all the fronts, there are many reasons to be optimistic. Israel seems to be on the upper hand in many of the fronts that it is conducting. But on the other hand, there are many reasons to be worried, and Israel is sort of engaged within these two fronts. Let's start beginning looking front by front, beginning with the one that is mostly active at the moment, which is Lebanon, the fighting on the Lebanon border. On the one hand, Israel has many reasons to be optimistic. The superiority, the extreme superiority that Israel has in intelligence, in air power, was clearly seen in the past 2 weeks. Let's see what happened. Israel was able to kill perhaps its biggest enemy, its arch rival, Hassan Nasrallah, the head of Hezbollah. He was killed in his bunker, in his main Hezbollah headquarters in Beirut. Not only he was killed, but right along with him, all the chain of command of Hezbollah was killed. This is a huge achievement as far as intelligence, as far as Air Force. I don't remember any such event in the world where one country was able to kill the entire chain of command of the biggest organization facing it. Not only that, at the moment, it seems that Israel was also able to kill the successor of Hassan Nasrallah, Hisham Safi Adin. There was a very big strike in Beirut overnight. The reports here in Israel, unconfirmed at this time, on a Friday morning local time, unconfirmed, but yet everything seems to indicate that Israel was also able to kill the successor of Hassan Nasrallah. Not only that, Israel is now engaged in a ground offensive in Lebanon, which, according to the reports coming from the IDF, seems to be very successful. The Israeli reports speak of more than 100 Hezbollah operatives killed so far in southern Lebanon. The Israeli army also says it was able to capture and bring back to Israel a lot of ammunition belonging to Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. So if this is the case, why can't Israelis feel that they're winning in the north, that Israel is actually winning that front? Well, overnight, once again, tens of rockets were fired from Lebanon into northern Israel, and with the range being longer and longer, now including the city of Haifa, which is the biggest city in the north and Israel's third largest city overall. That means that hundreds of thousands of Israelis once again spent the night in shelters. Does that mean that there's victory? For many Israelis, especially living in the north, that's not victory at all. How can you win a war when so many of your residents are actually in shelters? That front is obviously still active, a lot of fighting still going on, and one that will take weeks and weeks, if not months, to continue. So does Israel have the upper hand? Absolutely. Is victory about to come? Complete victory, as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu likes to say? Not so much. It doesn't seem to be the case. This is just one front. This is just Lebanon, but we're speaking now of a multi-front war, and another front is Gaza. Just like in Lebanon, Israel was able to kill practically all of the Hamas leadership. It was only yesterday, on Thursday, when the IDF released a statement saying it was able to kill Rawi Mashhata, who was one of the main figures of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, the head of the Hamas government in the Gaza Strip. He was apparently killed some 3 months ago in an Israeli strike, not long before another senior Hamas official, Muhammad Def, who was the head of the Hamas military wing in Gaza, was killed. Israel was able to crush practically all of the Hamas battalions that posed a major threat to southern Israel. If Hamas at the beginning of the war a year ago was able to fire major barrages into Israel, we're speaking of hundreds, maybe even thousands of rockets into Israel. Now it barely happens, a rocket here, a rocket there. Obviously, the ability of Hamas to fire has been practically shattered. So once again, if this is the case, why are Israelis not feeling any victory? That is very simple and very painful for Israelis. At the moment, a year after the war began, there are still 101 Israeli hostages in Gaza. For many Israelis, no war can be won with one hostage in Gaza, not to mention 101 hostages in Gaza. So obviously this is a major concern for Israelis, and we have to understand the ethos on which this country was established is to be a safe home for the Jewish people, especially after the Holocaust in Europe in the 1930s and the 1940s. And images which reminded of many Israelis of the Holocaust were seen here just a year ago, with thousands and thousands of Hamas militants crossing into Israel, killing Israelis in their homes, kidnapping Israelis in their homes. And as 101 hostages are still in Gaza, it doesn't mean as Israelis can feel any victory. It doesn't matter how many Hamas leaders were killed. It doesn't matter how many rockets Hamas is able to fire. It doesn't matter what the situation in Gaza looks like, as long as there are 101 Israeli hostages in Gaza. For many Israelis, especially here in Tel Aviv, especially here in this area, but not only here, in other parts of the country as well, Israel cannot claim victory. That will not happen until the last one of those 101 hostages comes back. For the moment, it's not happening. Not only that, there's not even any kind of ceasefire agreement on the way, no hostage deal on the way, nothing on the horizon. Of a month ago or 2 months ago, it seems as if things could happen. Now, nothing of this kind. So the Gaza front, one that is causing a very big uncertainty and uneasiness for Israelis. We mentioned Lebanon, we mentioned Gaza, another major front which is now active and becoming a direct confrontation is with Iran. In an unprecedented attack, less than 72 hours ago, Iran fired more than 180 ballistic missiles into Israel, which covered practically the entire scope of this country and sent practically all of the Israeli residents to shelters. All of this country spent an hour in shelters on Tuesday evening due to the rockets fired from Iran. Now comes a question of an Israeli retaliation. Israel has to react. How will it happen? When will it happen? What will be the way? This is a very big question which brings a lot of uncertainty. Israelis believe that Israel has the ability to strike in Iran, has the ability to cause major damage to Iran. But what will be the price? Will there be a retaliation from Iran, a retaliation to retaliation? A very big question. This, when the Iranian nuclear program is hovering all over this question, maybe it is time, say Israelis, that Israel hit the Iran nuclear targets, the Iranian nuclear sites. What could be a better chance? Iran has fired so many ballistic missiles at Israel. This is a chance to strike back, right? Well, here's the issue, here's the problem. Israel by itself can probably not do the work that it wants to do. Israel, as strong as it may be, cannot destroy the Iranian nuclear program by itself. For that to happen, Israel would need the United States. Does the United States want to be engaged in this kind of action just a month before the presidential elections? I would guess the answer is no. The last thing the Biden administration would want when elections are just around the corner, just a month away, is a major military confrontation involving the United States. The U.S. has so far been able to remain, at least directly, remain outside of the conflict, not being directly involved in offensive actions. The U.S. was involved in defensive actions alongside with Israel, intercepting some of the attacks coming from Iran this week and also the previous attack last April. But offensively, the U.S. is not involved. But if Israel and Iran now go into a direct military major confrontation, the U.S. would perhaps have to be involved to come to Israel's defense. President Biden doesn't want to do that. Secretary of State, the Secretary of State doesn't want to do that. The Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, doesn't want to do that. No one in the American administration wants to be involved in a war with elections looming just around the corner and with Donald Trump basically waiting there for something to fail in order to show that the administration is weak. Therefore, Israel wants to react and wants to react forcefully. The United States trying to persuade Israel to perhaps wait, to perhaps go into a weaker kind of response. Just another front that is worrying Israelis. We spoke of 3 fronts, but we're not done yet. We're speaking of a multi-front war. How about Yemen? Yemen, yes, it may be far, far away, some 1,300 miles or so from the coast of Israel, but this is a troubling issue. It was Yemen, the Houthis in Yemen, that were able to send the residents of the Tel Aviv metropolitan area, some 2 million people, sending all of them to shelters twice. Just about a week ago, with rockets and UAVs that were fired from Yemen and into Israeli territory. Throughout this year-long conflict, the Houthis mostly fired towards the southern Israeli city of Eilat, but in the last few months we're seeing the Houthis sending more and more drones and missiles and rockets towards the Tel Aviv metropolitan area, understanding that the damage that they can cause, material damage, and also damage as far as the feeling, the security feeling of Israelis is always bigger when you target the Tel Aviv metropolitan area with its 2 million people living here, sending all of them to shelters. That front is active. Israel has acted forcefully against the Houthis twice, targeting the Hodeidah port in Yemen, targeting other sites. Are the Houthis deterred? I would say no, because we're still seeing them firing drones towards Israeli territory. I don't see them stopping anymore despite the Israeli attacks. We spoke of 4 fronts. We didn't even mention Iraq. We didn't even mention Syria. But we will mention another front which is active, and especially last night, that is the West Bank. There are constant attempts to bring out terror actions from the West Bank into Israel proper. The latest example was seen just last Tuesday, as Israel was actually defending itself from the ballistic missiles coming from Iran. Just about minutes before that happened, there was a very big and bloody terror attack not far from the place where we are. It happened in Jaffa, on the southern part of Tel Aviv. 7 Israelis were murdered by 2 terrorists who came from the city of Hebron in the West Bank. So that arena is also very, very active. And the Israeli army acting forcefully last night in the city of Tulkarem, which is just across the green line which separates the West Bank from Israel proper. Some 15 Palestinians were killed, according to Palestinian reports, in this attack. One of them is the head of the Hamas military branch in the city of Tulkarem. We know that this is an area where the army was very, very active during the past few months. We mentioned all of these arenas. We mentioned the Jewish New Year. And just ahead of us is another somber date, very somber date for Israelis. That is October 7th, this coming Monday. October 7th will mark the 1-year anniversary to that Hamas offensive into the Gaza border communities, where Hamas was able to kill, was able to kidnap many Israeli civilians, many Israeli soldiers. And the remembrance to the October 7th events show what is perhaps the biggest threat to the Israeli society, and that is the unity of the Israeli society that is completely gone. How do we see that? There are actually 2 main ceremonies for the October 7th events. One is the governmental ceremony, the main ceremony, which is sponsored and done by the government. But many of the families of the victims, many of the families of those kidnapped actually do not want to take part in this ceremony. They're doing their own ceremony. They're saying that the Israeli government is actually the one that, of course, is not responsible for their loved ones being killed and kidnapped, but is responsible for the fact that all this happened due to the disunity that it brought into the Israeli society. Israel's main weapon all the time was the unity within its society, within its framework that has been shattered over the past year. Will Israel be able to bring that back, to bring the unity back? That, I think, is the main goal for Israelis for the coming year. So far, I have to say, it has not happened. The very big divisions are still here. If Israel will be able to unite once again, as it always did in face of trouble, then Israel can perhaps prevail. If Israel cannot do that, then the next year will probably be just as bad one as the one that just ended. This is Jonathan Regev for CGTN, Rothschild Boulevard, Tel Aviv.
We're in the heart of the Lebanese capital, an area that has been struck quite a lot over the past few days and over the past 11 to 12 months since the conflict between Israel and Palestine have started. Where I'm standing right now is an interesting spot because it is a medical center that has been targeted by an Israeli airstrike. I'm going to show you a little bit what I'm talking about. Down here in my right-hand side, you can see these are like protection covers that were used in those medical centers. And this is what's left. This is what left from that strike. We're going to pan the camera a little bit to show you the destruction of the building. You can see the 3 floors, especially the second floor there, has been completely destroyed. This, again, I want to emphasize that is a medical center and it has been targeted. But one of the issues here is it's not the only medical center that has been targeted in the past few months by the airstrikes. We spoke to the health minister, and what he told us was actually more than 20 hospitals and medical centers have been targeted. Over 130 paramedics and first aid providers were killed in these strikes. This is a significant damage in this country, especially during a humanitarian crisis that the country is facing with 1.2 million people that have been displaced. These 1.2 million people that have been displaced, of course, are people that need medical aid, are people that need first aid kits, people that need support. And the more strikes like this that are taking place, they're further putting a strain on the medical supplies and the medical health system of this country to be able to help those from war that have been affected by it. And now we're talking about a war because we are currently in a war. People say that it is a limited operation. Others call it a conflict. It is a war. It is a war, especially when one country enters into the soil of another, like the Israelis have done on the southern part of Lebanon with these limited and this localized, as they say, operations. It is a war, and it is a war because these operations have been targeting, unfortunately, not only the people that the Israeli Defense Forces say they targeted, which is Hezbollah, but a number of civilians, including women and children. Just yesterday, we spoke to the health minister. We're talking about more than 2,000 people that have lost their lives, especially civilians, and among them, a lot of children, which is very, very much alarming. Similar to that in Gaza, where thousands of children have been killed. And this is the one thing that is really putting a lot of pressure, but also it is very worrying that when children and women, and especially civilians, lose their lives. The conflict here in Beirut is ongoing. We have heavy strikes that have been taking place throughout the nights. Especially during the nights, there's heavy strikes, especially in the Dahiya district, which is a stronghold for Hezbollah. Now that district is where Hassan Nasrallah was killed, the leader of Hezbollah, with these bunker buster missiles by Israel targeting the head of Hezbollah, killing him. It is a conflict that is ongoing. It is a conflict that has been ongoing for a very long time, and Hezbollah from the first moment since the conflict in Gaza, between Gaza and Israel, they were on the side of Gaza, on the Palestinian side, supporting him with whatever they can. And that's how the Israelis have included them, let's so-called, in this whole conflict game. Now we're going to walk a little bit to show you guys. I mean, this is a quiet neighborhood. It's a neighborhood that people are just going by their daily life. Nothing much to see, but you can, as I showed you, there is the strike that took place in the building. You can see damaged places. All this many hours ago, actually more than 24 hours ago. Everywhere that you're looking right now was full of debris. It was full of gauze. It was full of surgical gowns. It was full of everything that a medical center has. It's and actually, it's quite interesting because right here is a graveyard that we're speaking to. This is a place where a lot of the people that have lost their lives from this conflict that has been taking place in here. It's a graveyard here. A lot of the people, a lot of the civilians who lost their lives A lot of the civilians who lost their lives are actually being buried here. So it's something that is quite worrying, because a lot of these now have been filled with, as you can see here, you can see fresh soil, which pretty much means that more and more people have been being buried now in this cemetery. You can also see the destruction actually from the airstrike. So the airstrike that literally took place a few meters away from here, I'm showing you right now, that is the destruction of the building that was struck. And then we're going to pan the camera a little bit around here to show you guys from that strike over there, these cemeteries have been destroyed because of the explosions, because of the wave, the shock wave that created it. The people are still trying to clean it up. The one part is that graveyards have been destroyed. People are cleaning it up. On the other hand, people are digging up new ones to be able to bury those who lost their lives, because so far what we do know, there's a number of people who lost their lives, and it's a conflict that is it is ongoing, and it's a conflict that will continue, unfortunately, from what it seems like, especially after the barrage of rockets from Iran towards Israel. It shows that this conflict is not going to end, because Israel is going to respond, and they want revenge. And of course, the Iranians have come out to say that from now on, our patience is done, and if anything happens, if we are targeted, then we will strike immediately. So this is a conflict that is becoming beyond just a regional conflict, a localized, let's say, conflict, and a regional. It's turning into something much larger, because we see large international players now being involved into this. We heard from the United Nations, and we heard from a number of countries condemning the acts of Israel, while we also hear from the United States and supporters of other countries to say that Israel has the right to defend itself. The one thing I can tell you for sure is, like, we don't really know who's right or wrong here, especially in times of war. But the one thing that I can tell you guys for sure, from what we have experienced on the ground these past 2.5 weeks now, that the only one who's losing are the civilians, are the women, are the children, are the people who have nothing to do with this war. And one more thing that I want to point out to you guys, that this strike that took place here, why I keep on pointing it out and I'm making it so significant, is because, one, it's a medical center. It's a medical center that treated people that were struck by other airstrikes. Second of all, where we're standing is not the common neighborhood that the Israelis continue to target, which is the Dahiyeh district, a stronghold for Hezbollah, but rather we're in the city center limits that have nothing to do with that area. So this is why I'm pointing it out. It's the second time during these past 2 weeks that an area outside of Dahiyeh, the Hezbollah stronghold, has been targeted. And a lot of people are worried. A lot of people are worried that this conflict can actually spill out from their neighborhoods, can spill out into other neighborhoods. There have also been a number of Christian villages that have been targeted in southern Lebanon, in Mount Lebanon as well. It's a conflict that, unfortunately, according to analysts, what they're saying is that it's gonna escalate. And that's the worries. That's the worries of a lot of people. We're just gonna walk around a little bit. It's a neighborhood. As you guys can see, the cleanup has already been done. People are continuing to clean up. What we do know from this strike, 8 people have lost their lives and 11 people have lost their lives and 10 have been injured. This is pretty much what a scene looks like after an airstrike in Beirut. Unfortunately, as we speak, more airstrikes are taking place across the capital, but across the country as well. It is a conflict that it's not going to end, according to analysts. It is and because of the conflict, humanitarian crisis has been developed. And according to the health minister, if there is not a ceasefire as soon as possible, then the government and the international community would not be able to cope with the needs of those who are displaced, the needs of those who are injured, and the needs of those who need necessities. Water, drinking water, toilet, stuff that anywhere else in the world you would think that are an average thing that we take for granted. But here, no, it is a big issue. And that's the one problem that the minister was telling us that could lead to a spread of disease. So he said, what the country needs more than medical aid is a ceasefire and less bombing. Evangelist Ipsos for CGTN, reporting from the capital of Lebanon, Beirut.